Hello everyone, welcome to this class once again. Today we are going to be talking about the probabilistic language model. Before that, let me give a recap of what we have done and where we are going with respect to learning and understanding words, sentences and so on. Okay. Earlier we had seen that context is very important in terms of understanding the meanings of the word in a given document. The next step in terms of understanding a document is understanding a sentence, correct. So, we need to understand how the words are strung together to form a sentence. So, if you understand how you learned the language when you are very young, nobody told you the syntax of the language, how the verbs and nouns play a part in constructing a sentence and so on. So, you have been listening to your peers, your teachers, your parents and then try to pick up new words and then try to repeat what you have heard earlier, correct. So, in some way we are able to capture the patterns in our brain and then make use of that whenever there is a need to use that particular word or sentence. How do we repeat or replicate this process while making the machine understand the word and then trying to construct a sentence out of the words it has understood. Okay. So, before moving on to that, let me first ask you a few questions. Even before asking you those questions, let me tell you what is going to be in this lecture, so that you get a very higher level view of what you are going to be learning in the next few minutes. Okay. I will be giving a very brief introduction to probability. It is very important for us to understand this. Many of you would have studied probability. I am going to be just connecting the NLP with the standard terminologies of probability and then see how we can make use of that in our studies here. And then I will talk about examples of the sample space, events and what is a random variable with respect to the documents and words. We will talk about the conditional probability, we will talk about some examples using bigrams and trigrams. And then we will also talk about the independence and how two words are independent or dependent depending on where they occur. And then later we bring in the language model introduction and I will define what is a chain rule, how to compute the probability of a sentence. Then I will bring in the Markov assumption in terms of reducing the complexity of the computation and so on. Okay. So, let me get to the next slide where I am going to be asking you a question. Okay. So, this is a very general question, most of you would know the answer for this. Find out what could be the last word in this how are you. Okay. So, what could be the last word? So, I will give you about 10 seconds, think about the word that could be formed at the end of this sentence. Okay, if you have not gotten enough time, you can pause this video and then think about it and then go to the next section of the slide. Okay. So, how many of you have thought about you? Have you gotten any other words at the end of this sentence? So, let me give you an example of what Google Ngram Viewer does. So, we will talk about this little later, but I am going to be giving only the output of what the Ngram Viewer does. So, if you look at the Ngram Viewer, which is based on reading all the books that are available in the Google books, and then the end of the word or end of the sentence is picked up based on how often they occur in those books. Okay. So, you are right, I think most of you would have figured out the first one, right. How are you, right. How many of you have thought about how are we? Okay. And then there are also places where there is the word the appears after how are. Okay. And they, how are these, how are things, how are your, how are such, how are our, how are all, and so on. So, it gives only the top 10. So, what actually this Ngram viewer does is it reads all the books and then tries to figure out what could be the possible word after how are. Okay. So, the first two words are given. So, it is going and then finding out you remember the trigram. So, in a trigram sequence it tries to find out the first two words are how are, the third one what could be the third one. So, you can also do this in the Ngram viewer by just using this option how are and then star. Okay. When you do this you get a very similar graph like this. I am sure you will get the same as this, may not be the similar one because the corpus is fixed. So, you should be getting almost the same graph that you are seeing right now. Okay. So, let me take you to the next question. Okay. So, now what I have done is I have taken the middle word off and now you have to find the middle word how dash you. So, I will give you again about a few seconds to think about the word that could be the part of the middle. Okay, how many of you have come up with more than 5? If you need more time you can pause the video and then take your time and to figure out how many could be formed in the middle of the sentence. Okay. So, let me show you what Google Ngram viewer had found. Okay. In the same fashion, now we have a trigram. We have the first word and the last word, the middle word is anything, right. So, you can just have you can use this phrase and then search in the Google Ngram viewer. So, you will get something like how do you. So, you see there is a do, it is not or as the first one, correct. So, here in the Google books probably how do you phrase had occurred more number of times than how are you. This should be you, I am sorry. Okay. And then the second one is how can you, the third one is how did you. You see the variations, right. So, since you are given the first slide, I told you that it is how are you, it is possible that you won't be able to think more than 2 or 3, maybe some smart one would have thought about more than 10, right. So, if you take the context differently, now you are filling the middle with different words. Okay. Let us go on to the next one. So, I have taken the first word out and then asking you to find out what is the first word, right. So, you can search in this fashion in the Google Ngram and let us see what we are getting. See the variations, right. So, we are blinded by the fact that earlier we had seen how in the first place. So, we would probably think all the time how and then maybe we will be thinking about the other ones, it will be maybe a little difficult for us to find the rest of the words that are going to be appearing as the first one. So, in this case if you look at it, we have what, why, how, where, what, and then the last one, let me take the last one at the start. So, are you is also the sentence that you can form. So, what Google had done is it is using a start symbol as the first symbol. Okay. So, for all the sentences, remember there will always be a start symbol and there will always be a end symbol. So, if you want to really process it, you have to look for the start symbol first and then end your processing when you see the end of the sentence. So, normally we use this as our starting symbol and our ending symbol. Okay. So, what did you gain from this? So, what we have seen here is using a different context, you will be able to find different words, right. So, the words are coming into the play when the context or different words are coming into the play when the context changes. The context is so small here, even if it is so small, the words that are fitting in into the middle or the first or in the last are changing drastically. So, how do they really come into play? So, as I mentioned earlier, based on the trigram, in this case since there are 3 words, the Google Ngram viewer would have scanned through the entire Google books and then figured out for the first example R could be the first one, because the R would have happened more number of times when you are giving how and you as the context. And then if you look at the second one, if you look at the first one, the you as the last word, correct. So, that happened so many number of times, it has counted that particular trigrams had occurred so many number of times. So, that comes as the first in the first graph. The second one, the middle one is missing, right. So, it goes and then finds out what could be the middle word and then it counted all those words, all those trigrams, and then figured out that the number of counts for do is more when it is combined with how and you is more. So, it brings the how do you as the first one. So, there is some kind of a counting involved in this, and it also tries to find out what could be the first one to be placed, and then you can see that in all the cases the first one is very highly placed, right, than the rest, correct. Okay. So, can we how do we simulate this? So, how is it possible? So, we are going to be getting into the details of this in this lecture from now onward.